Okay, now we're moving on to conclusions and recommendations. I'm doing these two things together. They do have a link between them, but they are not synonyms. They are different. They are not the same thing. And you have to understand the difference, keep them separate in your mind, and to realize that you can't do one without the other, but you certainly must not leave out the recommendations. What are the conclusions? Well, let's imagine you were setting out to see how good the performance of your company's latest website redesign was. So you've done all your research, you've presented it all, you've analyzed the data, and you've made a number of mini conclusions. Now, in this conclusions and recommendations chapter, you need, first of all, to group those mini conclusions together that you've drawn around each theme in the previous chapter or around each research gap that you identified. And your idea is to try to pull all of this back together now to be able to rethink about the question, the essential question in your title, the problem that you're going to solve in your title. To think about that and to look at all this information you've provided and try and nail it. Convince us that you have done what you promised to do. So you take your mini conclusions from each of those subsections in the previous chapter, and you can build those into the final conclusion. To what extent was your performance with your new website a success? You will have presented the data, you will have drawn the mini conclusions. Effectively, you only need to thread them together and give one overall conclusion. And the conclusion may well be, it was good, it wasn't quite as good as we expected, and actually, thinking about it, having done this research, it could be much, much, much better. I think we were expecting 60%, we got 55%, but actually we could and should have got 80 or 90%. If we adjust things appropriately, we can make some major improvements and we will be able to see a greater degree of success. Well, that's the conclusion. You must not stop there. I go back to where I started. Why do we do research? We do research because we can learn, and with learning we can change. Discere mutare est, to learn is to change. And with that knowledge we can change ourselves, and we can change our corner of the world, our family, our, in this case, business. So the point now is that you should go on to make recommendations to the company. In the light of your research, what could they do? But you shouldn't leave it at, someone should do something about this. We've got a margin, we could improve it. I've given you some information. Somebody should take this on and do something. No, 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 no. You know this subject better than anybody else. You know this company and your position in it and its systems and processes better than anybody else. You know how that fits together with your research subject better than anybody else. You're the only one who's ideally placed to say not just what should be done, why it should be done, how it should be done, when it should be done, by whom it should be done, how much it might cost, and how all that can be organized. So it's not a simple afterthought to your conclusions. So the company should do something because there's much in the way of improvement to be made here. You should be the one that identifies what this is and passes it on to your employer. Perhaps you almost like to think of it as perhaps a task for your successor, or a task for a new employee, or a task for you if you can get yourself employed to take this job on and do it. You should give them what we call a turnkey approach. You're giving them the key to the door to success. All they've got to do is take your key, your instructions of what should be done, how it should be done, who should be doing it, how it should be measured, when it should be started, how we will be able to measure its success. All of those things are the learning baby. You have to deliver the baby. Babies arrive pretty much after 9 months in the human sphere. After your 5 or 6 months in work, you need to be delivering the project, the research baby. Okay? This is what's at the top of that apex of your project. You're working towards delivering the baby. Just like any mum or dad, you don't know exactly what the baby's going to be. Is it going to be a boy or a girl? Maybe part of the way through your research, at about the time perhaps, you can take a photograph of mummy's tummy and see that it's a baby boy or a baby girl. Maybe halfway through the research, you've got a clearer idea of what the baby is ultimately going to be. But you still have to go all the way through that period of gestation to be able to get there. Okay? What we don't want to see is that you've laboured long and hard for all of those months, like any mother bringing a baby into the world has done. And you get to the point at which the baby should arrive and you say, someone should do something. That's not delivering the baby. Okay? The danger here is you have word limits, page limits for your work. You have time limits. There are submission dates. The recommendations come at the end. You can't really work out what they're going to be until you've got done all the rest of the work. So they're at the end of your limits, your constraints in terms of volume, length, time. It's easy to make them the thing that is cut. You dare not do this. This is where we see you. We see your master's worthiness. This is where you take your skills of analysis and your skills in research, in evaluation, in dealing with the data, in drawing conclusions. This is where you take all of that and you take it from being passive and you put it into the kinetic. You make it work. Something's going to happen. Something's going to be improved. You present it to the boss with a financial plan. You argue for a budget, stempel. And if you leave or if you stay, you know that because of the work you did, something is going to be, or has the potential to be, very much better than it was because of the work that you did. That, my friends, is your baby. And you are responsible for delivering them. John Cleese, the famous guy from Monty Python, once in a training video on doing presentations, said to somebody who'd done a very poor presentation, and the person said, but I worked so hard on it, I worked so long on it. And John Cleese's reply was, don't talk to me about the labour pains, show me the baby. I'm saying the same to you. It's fine that you've gone through the process, you've followed it, you've put in a lot of time, a lot of hours. But if you don't deliver the baby, what was it for? So you must not quit out and stop at the level of conclusions. I would almost rather you perceive them as being two separate things. Okay? The conclusion, we could have done better. The recommendations, this is how we can do better in detail. Here's an action program to take forward. Okay? It's not just a few lines with someone should do something because I've got a lot of evidence it should have been better. No baby there. So there we go. I've tried to take you all the way through it, but we're not quite finished yet because there's all the rest of it, isn't there? You have in your livret, in your handbook, you have been given ideas about things that you have to do and where they should be. I need to talk you through the use of some of them. You've taken your pen off your very last words in the conclusion. Oh, and by the way, those last words, I would always recommend that you find a phrase, a sentence, a line or two, a paragraph, doesn't have to be long, which is simply looking forward. It will therefore be very interesting to see whether in my absence, because I'm leaving to take up another post, whether the company will have the courage to vote the budget necessary to carry this project forward. I would like to believe so, and I sincerely hope that in the future the company will be able to capitalize substantially on the work that I've actually done in this project if these recommendations are to be followed. Always find a way of looking forward. Don't just take your pen off because you've done the last bit of the recommendation. Okay? Round it off nicely for us. So I need to go on and talk about all of these other things, which are what the hell are appendices and how to use them? What's a glossary and what you do with it? How do you handle figures? What about citation and attribution? I'm going to talk about these things in the next video. Thank you very much.